So obviously, on the internet, there's been an influx of men's content pointing out that men are not okay. A lot of men feel forgotten by society. They feel ousted. They feel like no one's really looking out for them, and there's a lack of good role models in society for men. And I don't make content talking about male disillusionment to devalue female problems, because obviously women have their problems in society too. They face their own biases and they have their own lived experiences. Everyone's got their own lived experiences, but men have really been swept under for quite a few years, which is why we're seeing such an influx in content about men. And I'm kind of on the red pill. I do agree with a lot of the things they say, but I really think that the movement of the red pill has basically become a shell of its former self and completely forgotten the original assignment when they signed up. Because now you have people like Fresh and Fit, now you have people like Sneeko, and then you got like the Andrew Tates, who have become more of a similar influencer to like that what they're fighting. It's just a different brand saying a different thing. And if you consume any of their content, sorry if I disagree with you, but you can only get so far by having a show where a bunch of Instagram models are on there and they're just roasting them the entire time. I don't think that really gets much done. As much as I agree your typical Instagram influencer is very disconnected from reality and in their world regardless of their gender, I just don't see much of a point in why they're pointing out something that's been said time and time again and again, when clearly we understand it. And that kind of leaves all these men wanting guidance or some sort of release or some sort of direction in life empty-handed, because it's almost like they have fallen for what seems to me like a grift now. And it's such a temporary relief from all the frustrations they feel in modern society that we are at this far cry spot where the problems aren't really solved. It just makes for interesting content that's been made time and time again. And I've taken a break from all these dating podcasts, but when I came back, I saw that they had a plastic love doll, for lack of a better term, near a microphone. I forget which one it was, but it was almost like it had drifted into a dystopian talk show that's just going in circles and not really going anywhere. But when I turn off my computer and I step outside, I actually do see some couples who are making it work, who are in healthy relationships. Because a lot of this men's red pill content puts the veneer that all women are like those Instagram models. All women are entitled. It basically makes it seem like all women are bad and there's no hope for any sort of men. And the internet does a good job of highlighting the worst, most extreme stories, which do sound pretty extreme. And when you look at the meat and potatoes of those stories, they seem pretty ridiculous. But I feel like those are just the highlights of our society. Now, is it dipping into that kind of chaos? I believe so. But are we quite there yet? Not really. And that's why I usually try to relay this message whenever I do come across the topic of young men or the way men have been treated in society, is that, yeah, a lot of your frustrations are valid. When I was a young kid in college, I came across a lot of the mistreatments, a lot of the shallow, ridiculous behaviors. I saw a lot of that. And you know what? I didn't have anybody there to validate me or make me feel righteous in feeling the way that I did, because I would always wonder, is it just me who's being sensitive, or do I really have a reason to have a bad taste in my mouth? Now, obviously, you never had anyone to tell you anything, so you would think that it was just you. Some people tend to point the finger elsewhere. Others will point the finger at themselves first. If you're like me and you point the finger at yourself first, that could come with a very negative effect of people will put the blame on you because you're more willing to accept it. But when you finally get all this validation from all this crazy internet culture that it's not your fault, and those experiences you had when you were 19, 20, 21, etc. are very valid, and you weren't the insane one in that thing, and you weren't asking for too much by asking to be treated like a human being, you feel two things: relief and resentment. Relief that you're not crazy, but resentment that society has held your head under for in an illusion for so long. And with that comes a lot of frustration anger. So when I see people get on the comment section of these Fresh and Fit channels or these other dating podcasts, I understand the release of endorphins that comes when you are releasing a lot of pent-up anger. And it could be a very addicting feeling that you can get again and again and again. And I think the final message I want to leave while I land this plane here is that a lot of the frustration is, for lack of a better term, mischanneled. I mean, they're channeling it into a YouTube comment section where they are sharing their horrible stories, reliving those experiences. And I'm not saying that those experiences are not valid. They are certainly valid. Everyone's got a tragic story behind them, but I also think that people should confront their traumas face on, so that way they can heal. But there comes a certain time where you have to stop lashing out and think, okay, how do I move forward in life? Because the clock is still ticking, the world's still rotating, the sun's still coming up. Life isn't halting because I have pent-up frustration. So I try to urge men not to channel this frustration and this backlash into comment sections all the time. Now, obviously, there's some discussions to be had where men talk with each other and share experiences with dating and, society in general. A lot of my grievances are with society in general. And it's always good to have that validation just to know that you're human and you deserve to be treated right. But with a lot of that talking and therapy and healing that goes on, because it's almost like they talk about in The Punisher, rage is like something that builds up that you kind of need to release. Otherwise, it's going to eat you alive like a disease. And I think that there can be some very healthy outlets for anger, because a lot of these news outlets talk about angry men. They're bad. Look, everybody's going to feel anger in their life. It's what you do with the anger that defines whether you're good or bad. Every hero you've read a story about has a moment where they completely flip to the dark side and become angry at something. Because from YouTube comment section to real life experiences, I've seen a lot of frustrated men act in ways that have held workplaces back, that have really toxified the society for a lot of people, especially those who are trying to move forward. Because you see some people who haven't overcome that trauma or have those things. I'm not saying that all men are innocent or that they're, that there's not bad men out there. There's bad everything out there when you go out into the world and you realize there's people who are good and then there's people who are bad. I think it's really that simple. But there's a lot of good men who have been twisted into acting in bad ways because of how society's treated them. I get these talks all the time at my day job because I'm surrounded by guys when we're working on cars, and I'm constantly hearing from young men on so-and-so screwed them over and so-and-so left them heartbroken, and you could tell they just don't know how to deal with these emotions. Eventually, it leads them to be very destructive and do these things that are destructive to themselves and sometimes to others, and that comes from mischanneling frustrations. And I'm not here to quite tell you the magic potion for how to channel your frustrations, but I could give you a broad answer. Find something that you like, that calls to you, that really fits you, something primarily, hopefully, that you can get monetized, whether it's working as an electrician or welding, something out there either in the real world or even on the internet that's constructive and does makes a difference for society that you could hopefully get paid for, because you channel that energy into a goal or a hobby. You never know what you can accomplish. Like right now, one of mine is playing guitar and playing instruments. Now, I'm not going to be a world famous musician like Eddie Money, but you never know what avenues being really good at guitar might lead you down, where one day I might be able to monetize that. Not necessarily on an internet basis, but like on a real life thing. If someone ever needs a session guitarist on the weekends and I need to make an extra $300, that could pile up and do something else. And I'm not saying that one thing's going to lead to the next, like it's a storybook or a Hollywood movie or anything like that. But what I will tell you is you never know how far one thing can quite take you. And this frustration and this dystopian society that we live in have gotten men to not try at all. And that's why a lot of them aren't really finding anything or finding any purpose besides going on to these dating podcasts and hating the opposite gender. and it keeps them from doing something constructive. It causes them to be destructive. And if you're constructive, there might be a small chance of this, but you might build yourself into the kind of guy that will attract a good woman, a woman who sees past all the Instagram shallowness and everything like that. Because there's a lot of main character syndrome that goes on with men today where they forget that they have a job to do too. You can't just wait for a quote-unquote traditional girl to plop into your lap. You have to build yourself into the kind of man that deserves a traditional woman. And that's where channeling this frustration can really come into play. Because when the right woman comes along, you don't want to be that guy that is completely bashing women or has a history in writing of you hating the opposite sex or thinking that they are nothing but bad or anything like that, because then you're going to drive the people who could do good for you past the point and just away from you as a whole. But that's what I got to say. I know I've made a lot of videos pertaining to this topic. But I wanted to make another one because this was heavily on my mind, and I wanted to explain why I present my ideals on this topic in the way that I do. Hopefully you enjoyed it. What are your thoughts? Peace out. Have a good night. See you later.